Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back from what I hope was a good lunch break for you. And welcome to the third of three sessions that have been exploring workforce issues in response to aging. And after the previous session, which was thinking about how to maintain workforce size, this last and third session is thinking about investing in workforce quality and productivity in an era of aging. Just quickly to introduce myself, my name is Chris Rolls. I'm Director of Age International in the UK, which is the UK member of the global HelpAge network. We've been very pleased to support HelpAge in this part of the world, to partner with it and to support many initiatives, including this conference. And the pattern of this session will be familiar to you by now. We'll receive a presentation of about 20 minutes. We'll have two respondents make a short reaction to what we've heard, and then we'll have time together for questions, observations, and discussion. And we're interested today in practical, policy, action-oriented responses to this challenge of investing in the quality and productivity of the workforce in an era of aging. Thinking about the context that we were given yesterday, so many good presentations yesterday giving us an overview, we were reminded that at least in terms of timing and the stage and length of demographic transition, there is a huge amount of diversity in this region. Really, the world is in this part of the world. The world is in this region in terms of the diverse experience, the different stages that countries are at, the different timings, the different lengths of time that the transition is actually taking. We were also, and that we have to bear this in mind, of course, when we think about the challenges and opportunities of developing workforce quality and productivity. We were also reminded that the demographic transition doesn't automatically result or reap a dividend. We can expect the current and future generations of older people to have improved social capital, to have improved capabilities from generations in the past. But this does not automatically lead to increased productivity if the right strategies and policies are not in place. And we were also reminded yesterday of the fact that this transition and these policy responses are taking place in an extremely dynamic environment. Not just the dynamics of the transition, but the changing characteristics of what it means to be an older person, but also the environmental context in which we are living, and the extremely rapid pace of change in technology, all of which creates a very dynamic, fluid environment in which we have to address the challenges and opportunities of population aging. So what are some of the ways in which societies at different stages of this transition can invest in labour quality and productivity as workforces age? This is a kind of key question that we'll be asking today. And what steps should governments take to ensure the quality of the workforce during this period of transition across the region? I'm going to introduce our speakers as we go along, rather than all at the beginning. But first, it's a great pleasure to introduce our main presenter this afternoon, Thangavel Panelabel Palani, who is a Senior Strategic Advisor and Chief Economist for UNDP in the Asia and Pacific region. Palani has recently acted as head author of a newly published report, Shaping the Future, How Changing Demographics Can Power Human Development. And Palani's presentation draws on the insights of this most interesting report. So we look forward to your presentation now. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon to everyone. As actually the chair introduced, I'm going to draw my presentations from the report recently launched, the UNDP Asia Pacific Human Development Report on shaping the future, how changing demographic can power human development, or the achievements of sustainable development goals in the 21st century. The report actually follow a life cycle approach. It's basically have, 4 analytical chapter apart from the introduction conclusions. One of the chapter focusing on, how country could actually nurture children, unlock the potential of youth, which is like 0 to 24 years age group. Then there is other chapter in the report focusing on how the country could actually leverage the kind of working age population, which many countries have currently witnessing. Then the report also has a separate chapter on aging, and again, the report highlight that aging to be seen as a kind of both challenges as well as an opportunities to kind of sustain the growth and human development. The report also has separate chapter on urbanization. But here in this next 20 minutes, I'm just going to focus, give some first say 10 minutes, a broad key messages of the report. The next 10 minutes about focusing on more on the particular theme of the session, that which is the investing the workforce quality and productivity. By nature, actually, the aging by nature actually is involved, it's basically improving the workforce quality, because the aging process takes place because the family tend to have less children. Otherwise, aging process won't occur. So the aging process have less children. When family have less children, then they actually tend to spend more towards educations and the health towards their children. Because the previous generation, each family used to have 3 or 4 or 5 children, but now have only 1 children. So therefore, family tend to spend further 1 children, give better education quality. So therefore, in aging process as nature will have better human capabilities from the family side. Similarly, from the government side, when the government need to provide education, health to the large number of children, large number of youth, then they actually spend very thin to each of the children. When the children becoming less in the total country population, then they tend to give more quality educations to the limited children by the government and the other communities. So therefore, by nature, the aging process tend to have a positive impact on the workforce quality, and which again will lead to the productivity improvement. With that, actually, but this, as chair said, this is not an automatic process. It need a kind of enabling policy environment. That is what we're going to actually focus in the presentation. Before I go, let me just highlight that the first slide is a kind of the population age structure. How in the last 65 years, the remaining part of the century, the age composition of Asia Pacific have been changing. If you see the 1950, almost close to 58% of the populations, 1975, almost close to the 60% of our population less than 24 years old. But now that is actually kind of started declining. In future, the children's youth will be less, more the top one, the blue color one, which is the aged people, that's going to be gradually, steadily increasing. So we're going to have a big shift in the demographic changes. And that shift is taking place much more dramatically, rapidly in Asia Pacific compared to the other developing region or even other world region faced in the past. This slide is basically, even though the Asia Pacific actually as a region, a kind of dramatic change take place, but the different sub-region in Asia Pacific witnessing a kind of different stages of the peaking their the kind of the share of working age population in the total population, which that is what actually make country to get that kind of demographic dividend. When, for example, if you see this is the share of working age population of East Asia. This is a period East Asia witnessed increasing the share of working age population in their country. That is the same period the East Asian country witnessed actually the acceleration of economic growth, acceleration of the human development progress. Now, after 2010, East Asian countries started witnessing declining share of working age population. In this period, East Asian countries started to slow down economic growth. The similar opportunity now available for other sub-region like South Asia and Southeast Asia. Like this red color is the South Asia one. Like South Asia reached a peak only around 250 or something like that. So the next 30-40 years, South Asian country like say India, Bangladesh, or Nepal, Bhutan, Pakistan have a huge demographic opportunity, and they could actually convert that opportunity. I mean, if they focus on, like kind of quality education and provide them decent employment. So that's I will focus within the next few seconds. And again, the Asia Pacific country is not actually all in kind of the same stage of demographic transition. As you could see that we have classified country broadly, Asia Pacific country, we have about 40 countries in our region. If we classify them, some 10-12 countries, all the initial stages of the demographic transition. In those countries like Afghanistan, Timor-Leste, Pakistan, some of the Pacific country, still the fertility rate is very high, the population growth somewhat very high. Those countries do not have that kind of demographic opportunity right now. Whereas the other country, the middle stage country, where like country like say, as I said, Philippines, Bangladesh, Indonesia, India, these countries currently have a significant amount of the population in the working age group, 15 to 64 year age group. These countries have the next 30 years have huge actually demographic opportunity. The third set of country, this is a country like China or Thailand, Singapore, and other country. In fact, some of the country like Sri Lanka, North Korea also could be considered the advanced stage of country. These countries is basically now are in future going to face a serious aging issue. Whereas the other country, it face aging issue after 20-25 years. Whereas this country is going to face issue immediately. And what are the channels in which the opportunity can be converted into the demographic dividend? The report highlight these are the channels. Like greater labor supply is one channel. Like if a country have more labor, then it will produce more economic output, GDP. Similarly, when the country have a large working age population, then when with less dependent, then the family or government can save more. So higher saving investment is other channel. Then the rising productivity is other channel. So these are the channels in which demographic opportunity could be converted as the improved human development. There are research done, analysis done by a number of actually academic scholar, international institutions like even IMF and all done. Those studies, consistently established that if you look into the last 40 years, the East Asian economic growth, up to 25% to 40% of the economic growth in East Asian countries could be attributable to the so-called demographic opportunity. Like country like China and other country, Korea, Japan, all able to convert, leverage the demographic opportunity into the demographic dividend. And as I said, that dividend is not an automatic process. It requires long-term vision, long-term strategy, and good governance. And what are some of the common policy measures applicable to all countries? The first is that country need to integrate demographic changes into the national development plan and national development strategy. I mean, whether it's a youth challenges, whether it's a aging challenges, or it's opportunity of youth, or it's urbanization challenges, whatever the challenges or opportunity, they need to integrate into the national development plan and strategies. The next issue that there is, kind of some lack of data about the aging population or youth populations and all kind of other population. So country need to put more emphasis on collecting more better data and analyze them so that they could actually prepare a informed decision-making process. Then, since Asia Pacific are not in a one homogeneous type of demographic stages, there is a good potential for regional cooperations, integrations to derive more benefit, more human development, more economic growth. Some country face labor shortage, some country face labor surplus, so they could actually, using labor migration. Similarly, some country have more saving, more, resources, whereas some other country face labor shortages. So therefore, regional cooperation could be one policy instrument. Let me go quickly some of this. If country are in the early stage of democratic transition, if a country has more young population, like country, as I said, country like Afghanistan, Pakistan, currently about 60% of their population are less than 24 years old, less than 25 years old. And those country like Timor-Leste, they are right now, they have a number of priority, but these three important they need to focus. One is building human capabilities, put more emphasis on, the kind of educations, primary educations, quality of educations, and the secondary, tertiary educations, those kind of things. First thing they need to do that, because thanks to MDG, many countries achieved universal primary education. But when it comes to the quality of education, they still do not have that kind of things. Like in India, Bangladesh, like 1/4 of the children get drop out when they reach 5th grade. So therefore, they need to focus on quality of education. Second one, smooth transition from school to work. Like the kind of education we have, people have college degree, but then they do not find a job because the college produce certain skill, whereas businesses require certain other skill. So there is a huge skill mismatch we witness, and there is a huge youth unemployment problem many country faces. So therefore, kind of vocational education training, apprentice, internship, that kind of things, like many countries like Germany and many other European countries have that kind of very strong vocational training program. Even when the students are in high school, so they need to focus on that kind of things to make it, to reduce the youth unemployment, that kind of issue. The third is the encourage youth participations. Youth, need to bring into the development decision-making process, so that they know, what need to be done. If the countries are in the middle stage of demographic stage, as I said, this country like Indonesia, Philippines, India, Bangladesh, many countries are in this category. They need to focus on, they have a number of challenges, but these three is more important. One is creating a more better, decent job. Even the last 20-30 years, many countries facing a huge, actually, creating job challenges, big issue. Many countries, facing a large working poor kind of phenomena, lot of underemployment, unemployment problem is there. But next 25 years, next 15-20 years, every year Asia Pacific going to add 20 million people, 20 million youth going to join in the labor market. So therefore, creating more additional better job is going to be a big challenge. If they do that, then they could be able to, convert opportunity into the dividend. For that, the report highlights a number of, specific policy recommendation. Due to the time shortage, I'm not going to that, but these are some of the policy recommendation, like, economic diversification. Some of the country like Bhutan, most of the economic growth coming from one sector. Laos also same thing. As a result, there is not much enough employment opportunities being created. So economic diversification, promoting small, medium enterprises, those kind of things is important. The next one is that, economic women empowerment. Like if you look into the developmental history of China, other country, the country which is able to convert demographic opportunity into demographic dividend, they used actually the women workforce in a more optimal way. If you look into the China, for example, 70% of the female in the working age group are in the labor market. Whereas if you look into India or other country in South Asia, only 30% of the women in the working age group, in fact, are in the labor market. They are looking for a job, or are in a job. 70% of the women They are not actually interested in job market. They are not even getting to the labor market. So if a country like India or Bangladesh, other country, South Asian country, if they wanted to get demographic opportunity, they need to bring more women into the labor market, paid employment. The report again highlight number of specific recommendation, how country like Malaysia try to promote that kind of, bringing more women into labor market, that kind of things. The third channel is that the country need to promote more inclusive financial sector. When I say inclusive financial sector, that more than half of the population in Asia Pacific do not have bank account, do not have access to the banking services. So therefore, they tend to save in the non-monetary, assets. Like they tend to buy gold, jewelry and other things and keep it in a bank locker or save it in home. That is, do not have a multiplier, effect. So therefore, country need to actually promote domestic, inclusive financial banking services. So therefore, the resources could be mobilized, saved, and that could be channeled into productive investment so that it has a future, growth and development. Let me go into quickly. I'm sorry, I already took more than 15-20 minutes. Okay, please give me a warning if I'm taking more time. Okay. So let me just go into the aging. Aging, as I said initially, East Asian country took almost about 80 to 100 years to get the aging share of population from 7 to 14%. 7 to 14% of the aging population. France took about 115 years. Other country like 80 or 70 years. Whereas in our region, the same doubling of aging population share taking place in a matter of 20 years. Country like Thailand or South Korea, they just double the aging process, much more dramatic speed. So that is the one thing we need to note that. And the challenges also, it's been last 2 days highlighted that the aging process, not only the speed, even the number of population. Currently, more than half of the aged population, this is a Asia Pacific share, red color. More than half of the aged population lives in Asia Pacific. Even 2050, the Asia Pacific will have about 60% of the aged population. We will have a large number of aged people in the world also. What kind of challenges the aged people will have? Let me again go in that most of the aged people are women. Particularly as they go into that in the higher age, if you look into the 80 years and above age group, like for every actually 100, women living, only 60-65 male is living. So the aging process is basically a feminization issue. It's most of the aged people, in fact, are women. So that is the one thing. Second one is that, again, yesterday and today highlighted that most of the aged people tend to live alone. They are not living with the family. The other challenge is that, like the pension coverage in Asia Pacific, relatively less. Even, in a very, very generous measure, less than half of the population only in Asia Pacific have pension coverages. What kind of policy the aged country should do? I'm just going a bit quickly. First is that country, as I said, the aging need not be a big concern if you plan it well. If you plan it well when they were actually children or youth or working people, then the aging process could be smoothened. By actually saving more, by better pension and other thing. Second one is that integrating aging issue into national planning, then create more opportunity for employment. Like as I said, kind of flexible employment opportunity. Kind of providing work training during the working age period. And similarly improving healthcare system, because our healthcare system was designed to address, tackle infant mortality or maternal mortality. Our healthcare system was designed 50 years, 40 years back, not to take care of the non-communicable diseases or the kind of the aging problem. So therefore, we need to also reform our healthcare system, and we also need to bring in the kind of long-term actually healthcare insurance, all kind of other issues. Let me also go into some other policy like the pension system. As I said, the pension coverage is low and also is inadequate. There is also a big sustainability issue, and we also need to promote support acting aging system. So we also need to tackle this negative perception. Aging is seen as a burden, and in the UNDP side, UN side, we don't see that aging is seen as a more like a progress to human development. Aging occurring because of the life expectancy improvement. So we need to do some kind of bit advocacy to kind of, tackle this negative perception. Let me also just quickly run through in the next 3 or 4 minutes on the workforce quality. As I said, the aging process by nature entitle improvement in human capabilities, increased productivity, which I said at the beginning itself. It is not an automatic process. Currently, many countries facing skill shortages. Like because of the skill shortages, the future Asian growth is a kind of big risk. Like there are studies, countries like India or even China or Indonesia also face huge the kind of shortage of skill shortages. We have more labor, but the type of skill need China, India, Indonesia, that is the kind of shortage is there. So therefore we need to address the skill shortages issue. So therefore more priority should be given technical vocational training, and there is also mindset need to be changed, because family think that getting children to polytechnic, this kind of vocational training seen be a kind of inferior quality of education compared to the college education. So we need to also change mindset of the families so that the more children goes to the polytechnic and vocational training. And we also need to focus on the quality of educations, and East Asian school done remarkably well. There is OECD, they periodically bring out world ranking of high school. And in the world ranking of high school, East Asian school top first 6 ranking. All the East Asian school in Singapore, Hong Kong, China, Seoul, they top in the world ranking. First 6 ranking belong to Asia Pacific. But when you go to the college ranking, university ranking, most of the top ranking of the college university all in North America or Europe or Australia, New Zealand. So therefore we need to focus on that kind of issue. Let me also highlight that the productivity issue. Asia Pacific witnessing rapid productivity, particularly in the previous period before global financial crisis. Asia Pacific country witnessed a remarkable productivity growth, but in the last 6-7 years, productivity growth, almost all the countries have declined, decelerated. So this is a big issue. As a result, country like China, many other countries, there is a kind of economic slowing down. So future economic growth of Asia need not depends upon the labor supply, quantity of labor. Need to focus on the kind of the quality of supply, quality of labor, and the kind of improvement labor productivity. The report highlighted some of the specific policy measure for improving productivity of labor, like promoting skill educations and economic structural transformation, economic diversification, and that kind of things, and also regional, the global value chain in those kind of things. Again, there is some experts argue that the recent slowdown economic growth in China, this is a China economic growth, and the recent acceleration growth in India, it's all due to the kind of demographic changes. India is currently witnessing increasing share of working age population, whereas China currently witnessing declining share in their working age population. And they say that is one of the reason for this kind of, and so therefore, in my view, investing workforce human capabilities and focusing on productivity enhancing initiative is a critical for our country going to the aging stages. So with that, I conclude my presentation. The report can be downloaded in this web page, and we have also some few copies here. We can also give hard copies. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I took slightly more time than allocated. So thank you very much.
Palani, thank you very much, and for a very, very concise summary, I thought, of the main findings of the report, with a particular focus on the issue of workforce quality. And we've heard some quite specific recommendations there in terms of the delineating the region by those countries that can be seen as the initial stage of a demographic transition, those in the middle, and those at an advanced stage, with a different emphasis, perhaps, you are suggesting, for policy responses in those different contexts. But you've also pointed out to the slowdown in growth in recent years, to the decline in productivity, and some of the challenges that are faced right now across the region. We're very fortunate to have two distinguished responders to help stimulate further discussion on the presentation. First of all, I turn to my left to Sri Tiningsi Adiotomo. I hope I can call you Sri, who is Emeritus Professor at the Faculty of Economics and Business at the University of Indonesia, of course in Jakarta. And Sri, we look forward to your reflections on the presentation that we've heard.
Thank you very much. I enjoy the very comprehensive presenter by Dr. Palani, covering almost everything. And I like the stages of the demographic transition and what priority focus, policy focus on that. But firstly, when I was asked to be discussant of the title, Investing in Workforce Quality and Productivity in an Era of Aging, I did a lot of thinking. So I think this is all about an issue, getting rich before growing old. Yeah, but this is not for individual. This is applicable to developed countries, because in the developed countries, the process of aging is very gradual when income per capita is already high. And therefore, the government have ample of time and ample of resources to redirect policy toward maintaining the quality of older person. So this is not for individual. On the other hand, developing countries, the rapid decline in fertility is very, all of a sudden, unprecedented, and the result is it changes in its structure and aging process is very near. And the government is not ready while the income per capita is low and social protection coverage is also very low. So when we want to have in the future, an active aging population who are independent from support from other people and from support for other government, who can do activity daily living and instrumental daily living. They have savings, they have pensions, they have insurance, and they have regular income, so they are independent. But this is a long process. We cannot do this alone. This is a concerted effort. While Dr. Palani said that this is the early transition, demographic transition, this is the middle, and this is the late. I like this. And this is very applicable to Indonesian situation where regional variation is very high. We have also what's the so-called 3 stages of demographic transition. Provinces with good performance in family planning program experience fertility decline, very rapid fertility decline. Aging index is high. And this is the late transition, like Bali, like Yogyakarta, like East Java. They have to be ready to take care of their older person. And the middle and the early transition are those provinces not very success in family planning program. But for the national policy, we should do not segment it like this, but developing human capital with quality, with life cycle approach. So I tend to segment it not by stages of transition, but 3 groups of population by age: children and youth, workers, and older person. Each have policy implication, equally important. For children and youth, Human capital development is important. Start from the first 1,000 days of life, still in the womb, because cognitive development, the brain development start 2 months in the womb. And this is the structure of the cognitive skill is in there. And with early childhood development, education. Education is not only the quantity of education, but also the quality of education. Reading, math, and science, it is cognitive science. It is cognitive skill, because with education, they have knowledge. When they have knowledge, they can absorb the technology, which is very important for increasing productivity. And life skill development start from the early education, character building, soft skill, and life skill. And don't forget about healthcare and nutrition. What is the policy implication in there? Compulsory basic education, universal health care, adequate food and nutrition. Now comes to the workers. What should we do with the young workers? They should have high employability, and therefore they are facing with aging readiness. To do this, they said they have to have skill and competence, knowledge, technology adaptation, and increasing productivity. Increasing productivity will increase their wages. If their wages increases, their standard of living is increasing. Therefore, they will have saving and they have investment. Now, what should the government do? This is all about economic policy, investment for employment creation, governance, easy to invest, administration, and to increase GDP growth through labor productivity and total factor productivity. So actually increasing productivity of the workers is total effort. From the supply side, if we already provide healthy, intelligent, and productive workers, now how can the government absorb with productive investment in industry, manufacturing, and services? So goods and services produced by the workers can increase the GDP, and therefore income per capita is high. When these workers becomes aging, they are ready when they are aging. So we will have active aging, healthy, independent, functional ability, sufficient income, aging in place, happy and wellness of older person. I think Dr. Palani already talked a lot about what to do with the current older person. So to my suggestion, we should see a long-term vision about developing productive workers that they will be ready for aging process. I like what Dr. Palani said about smooth transition from school to work. I like this. I have done some studies, explorative studies about how is young people in Indonesia facing the employment. And I found out very frustrating that employers used to prefer soft skill rather than technical skill. Ibu, they said, I am Ibu. The employer said, technical skill we can train 1 year, but soft skill, it's a long time process. And we need them. It is very, very, very simple. Discipline, communication, networking, teamwork, and what is that? Attitude, behavior attitude. And in some areas like rural-urban transition, these young people are not ready. They tend to drop out from school, but they adapt like gadgets, smoking, and motorcycles. They like these things rather than preparing themselves to go to work. This is about, and one more is a portion of young people NEET, not in education, not in employment, not conducting any training. What should we do about this? It's about more than 10% of young population are in this group. I think this is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've been reminded that in the case of Indonesia, there's evidence of each stage of the demographic transition in one country, not just as a way of demarcating the region by different stages, but it's even experienced within one country, and the importance of taking a life cycle approach that whilst that at different stages, a different emphasis may be important in terms of policy and the application of resources to address the needs of each stage, still a whole life cycle approach is important, including focusing on cognitive development, which is so important, of course, in building adaptive skills, especially at a time of technological transformation, but also the role of health and nutrition in maintaining healthy workforce and the ability to stay in the workforce, and at the early age, as Sri ended, the importance of improving the employability of young people. So we have a second responder to the presentation. I'm pleased to introduce Wanchap Sawanakit, who is Policy and Planning Analyst at the National Economic and Social Development Board in Thailand. Wanchap.
Okay, thanks. First of all, thanks Palani for his presentation, a very good one. Policy makers. So I will talk about policy, the implication of policy from his presentation. Okay, I look into his presentation, and he mentioned that Thailand is in the advanced stage, right, for the demographic state of demographic. And he said that if country prepare good, there'll be a smooth. And I think of Thailand, do we prepare a good one? And I think, no, we didn't prepare a good one for Thailand, because one day we just realized that, oh, we are in the old society already. And many of the government in Thailand still think that demographic change is about elderly. It's not about the whole life cycle approach. This is very important. So we're gonna talk about 4 issues that I learned from his presentation. The first thing is that I think that demographic transition is not about elderly. This is very important. You have to communicate this message to all the policy makers, especially in the local level. Some of them still think that, oh, we talk about old age society, so we talk about elderly. So we're going to make elderly be happy in their life. Not about preparing them from the birth to the death. So this is very important that if you talk about demographic transition, you need to talk about the birth, the very good birth until the date. So it means that you have to have a good nutrition to become a very good early childhood and to be a quality adult in the future. You need to have a good education for productive labor, and you need to have more opportunities for employment in order to recreate an income security to be a secure elderly. I think this message is very important to convey or to tell the policymakers that when you look into the demographic transition, you need to look all the the life cycle approach like that. The second one, policy for demographic transition, at least they consist of 3 dimensions. The first one is about capacity enhancement. The second one is about security, and the third one is about the welfare or the support system. Capacity enhancement for productive working life, such as the lifelong learning, such as the vocational training, such as the the training to be a very good workers in the Industry 4.0 or something. And for the security, such as the good pension system, you need to have a a sustained one and a sufficient one for the pension for each country, and a support system such as the universal health care and the long-term care. This is very important for to make the life of the elderly very secure. And the third issue that I want to talk about is about each country should not work alone. This is very important because you have UNDP, you have HelpAge, and you have many lessons learned from many countries. For example, like Thailand, if you're in the not in the advanced stage, like Thailand, you're in the what you call the second one, the second stage. Middle stage, okay. In the middle stage, there are so many lessons learned from like Thailand. We are not in a good processing of the democratic change. So if country like Laos, like Vietnam, you're not in the third stage already. So you can learn the mistake, like Japan. They have been in the old society for years. Korea, starting to be that. Thailand, been very, very long time for the old society. We have all the pension, we have all the health coverage, we have many things. So you can learn from the mistake of Thailand. For example, even we have a very good health system, but still we have many of the the left out, like the inner road areas. They still couldn't access to the hospital because of the transportation from the house to the hospital is very far away. So we establish what we call the unit for the first of the hospital. What you call the kind of first care of the healthcare, like that. So this one is very good in order to secure the livelihood of the old people in their community. Don't have to move into the town. Another lesson learned from Thailand is that we have what we call the community long-term care. Don't need to move the elderly to the hospital, but use their home as the hospital, so they can stay at the house and be kind of have the nutrition, have all the health care at their house. And the final thing that I want to say is about the health issues. You highlight some of the health in your presentation, and I thinking of my Buddhist belief. We believe that, this is my translation, so sorry that if we have no sickness, it is the most valuable asset in the life. This means that, so for example, if countries like in your country, like Thailand, now we face a lot of problem of the NCD. Many of my friends, including me, I have a lot of NCD. So what I don't call diabetes, something like that, is all in my body. So because we didn't prepare for this kind of things. But if your country, you're still young in the age transition, you can start to prepare. Like you start to say to people that don't drink too much. Don't smoke too much, or go to exercise in the community. Like in Thailand, in the rural area, we have like a Thai club dancing. The elderly and the young one, they come to, every evening, they come to dance in the community place. And then because of the dancing, now many of the elderly, they don't have to go to the hospital because they are very in the good health. But for the work one in Bangkok like me, 6 a.m. until 9 p.m., I'm out of the house. Everything is in my body, I mean the NCD. So this is very good. If you can prevent from being NCD, in the future you will have a livelihood security because you don't have to go to hospital, you don't have to pay a lot of money for that kind of medicines. And this is the 4 issues that I learned from the Palanese presentation. And for everything, in conclusion, I would like to recommend you, if you are policymakers, just think of this kind of democratic transition as a livelihood approach. It is not just only the last one, not only the dead one or the elderly one, but it starts from the birth until the death. Look into this kind of process. You will find that the transition of the age will be very smooth. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Wanja. So we have some time now for contributions from the hall. We'll take them in groups, and then I'll invite the panel to comment on either your questions or your observations. So first at the back, I think.
Yes. My name is Mega from ASEAN Secretariat. I have one question because this group, we discuss about workforce quality and productivity, which means we need investment in education, in vocational training, so that over the years, the quality of human resources will increase. I think even outside the context of a discussion on aging issues or aging population, education sector has been talking about it, even in the context of economic growth, sustainable economy, and so on. My question is that this is the tendency globally. The more educated women, the more we are reluctant to give birth. There is somehow a correlation between increased level of education and lower fertility rate. I mean, statistically, it shows. Those in the more developed countries, in urban cities, will have lower fertility rate. So now we see countries that have been aging for many years. You would see the demography is changing. Less young people, more old people. The question is, how can we improve workforce quality, which means investment in education, but at the same time maintain fertility rate, not to reduce? Thank you.
Other questions or observations? Yeah. Can we come to the middle here? Thank you.
Thank you. I am Nicodemus Chifupa, working with HelpAge International from Southern Africa. I appreciate the presenters for insights and informative discussions. It's a learning curve for us from Africa to see how coordinated and how advanced you are moving together, people from different sectors in view of aging. I have an observation which I would want to raise as a question for your insights in case you may have. I'm very aware that what I may be saying here could be out of context because what we have experienced in Africa could not be the same, may not be the same here. Agreeable with the first presenter who highlighted a mismatch between skills, particularly from tertiary institutions, and the labor market. What can better be done? An example, in some of the countries in Africa, there would be a glaring need for teachers, but tertiary institutions continue to chain out lawyers who then get to schools to teach as temporal teachers. And that glaring mismatch in a continuum, what can really be done about that? But also, could there be indications of what older persons, those who have the privilege to retire, particularly in the formal economy, what are the trends of what they do when they have retired? The phenomenon in Africa simply looks like if somebody has retired from formal employment, then they are incapable of doing anything else. I'm retired, I'm not doing anything, I'm retired. If there are indications of what people from the informal economy do on retirement, then the next question is there potential for reskilling older persons in view of the vocations they would have chosen to take on? But also that, what I've been listening through this conference today, it appears Asian countries still have the informal economy as the bigger employer of the two. With that in mind, are those in the informal sector skilled adequately in order to be able to utilize their skills into old age? Because they hardly retire. That's what they have done for life, and they continue to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we're going to separate those into three separate questions and take each in turn because they cover very different subjects. So let's begin with the first, which is based on an assumption, I think, that it's desirable to maintain fertility levels and what can be done when investment in education and the empowerment of women through education invariably leads, in present experience, to a decline in fertility. So let's address that first question. Who would like to respond to that? Okay.
Thank you for the question. This is intriguing. The lady from ASEAN Secretariat. Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, I have read the Gender Equality and Development World Bank in 2012. And yes, more women in tertiary education, and they are not likely to get married and have children. And this is worrying. But I don't think this is a global issue. This is, I think in Indonesia, for instance, or in Thailand probably, family value is still a priority. A family value, a promotion of family value, parenting, early childhood development to develop early childhood to develop characteristics still highly valued. So if we promote with very big campaign back to the old days, then when families are the center of the development, I think it will take a long time. Start from when the children is when they are still in the youth, adolescent, when they are still adolescent, that it is important to have family. I think it can be done. Although some anomaly or what is that, outliers may happen. So I think I'm still optimistic that it will not happen, and then replacement level below 1 still for Indonesia especially is still a long way. So Ibu from ASEAN, I'm not very worried about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'll also answer that one. Basically, I mean, answer lies in my presentation itself. Basically, it need not actually happen. I mean, the higher education's working women will tend to have less children, provided if you actually able to provide that kind of atmosphere like flexible employment opportunity for women. I mean, so that women actually, I mean, for childbearing stage, early stage for a few years, she can go on at home, then she can come back. If your labor market, flexible labor market allow to women go home for a few years, come back after a few years, then that's one policy measure will enable working women or educated women will continue to have one or two child. Similarly, the kind of the what I said, quality, affordable child healthcare center, like child care center. Like if you have that crèche type of things, then when the child is like 1 year, 2 year, they can leave that actually child confidently. I mean, with some kind of quality, affordable child center. Then she can go to job with peace of mind. But the question is that whether you have that kind of, child care center is there or not. So if you provide that kind of quality child care center in all the neighborhood, and if you give them like kind of, other enabling environment, in my view, educated woman, working woman, still can have, 1 or 2 child. Because total fertility declining is happened, like fertility was like 5 or 6. From there, it's declined to like 2 or 3, even some countries less than 2. But that is replacement level is 2.1. So that once you manage that level, then it's still fine. So basically, fertility declining is not a bad phenomena if it was like 6. then you reduce to 2. The problem is that from 2 to if you go to 1, then it's a problem. So that is what we need to manage. Whether we could stabilize somewhere around 2 is a question. So I think if you have policy, then in practical terms, you could be able to maintain, the fertility rate even with higher educations and higher, I would say, the working woman ratios.
Okay, in the policy and in the practical one, okay, I agree with Mega. Okay, in Thailand, if you talk about Bangkok people, educated one, tend to be less children and less, and some, like myself, I already married but no children. So replacement rate is really low, right, for me. And it's the same as all of my friends in my university time. So I agree with Mega said. Even in Thailand, you know that Thailand has a very good economic environment. We have the policy. Women that, I don't know how to call it, give the birth, they can be out of the work for at least 90 days or 180 days without pay, like that. But in my office, NSV, half of my colleagues, they don't have children. Because of they are well-educated people, but they don't have children. Because this is not about the environment, but it might become also of the, what you call the career path. When you are educated one, you want to go further and further. You want to compete. If you go for giving the birth, you might be out of that kind of track. So this is another, it's not about environment, but it's about attitude of something that the policy have to tackle down, that if they go to the birth, so they have to give the kind of the same opportunity as a male. And the second one, I like what the Swedish did, the government, that they allow a male to go to take care of children also. So this is a good one. If the policy makers, if in our ASEAN countries, we can talk about allow the male to go to taking care of babies and women come back to work, so it will be more equally in the gender balance. I still believe that this is not about the environment, but it's all about everything to give the opportunity for both male and female in order to taking care of the children. Okay.
And then there were two questions, I think, that followed that. The first, very specifically, what to do about the perceived mismatch, or is there a mismatch between supply and demand in the link between higher education and the labour market? Let's just start with that one, and then I want to elaborate on the third question, maybe. Any comments on the links, but at the tertiary level?
Yeah. Even tertiary level, the lack of teachers or the lack of the kind of skill mismatch. That's what even in my presentation I kind of highlighted, that the kind of college university is actually producing a kind of certain skill, whereas businesses require certain other skill. So if I understand correctly, that is what actually you raised, and that's also common in many of the Asia Pacific countries. So that's where actually the kind of country like Malaysia, what they done it, basically they brought a kind of national council, businesses, civil society, and the kind of young workers and the kind of academic people to come jointly design the curriculum, the college university curriculum, to kind of address the mismatch issue. So that could be one issue. Similarly, if the more private sector involved in tertiary educations, like kind of taking care of the teacher salary or facilitating funding for research and development, those kind of things, then another opportunity. Similarly, if they also, take the students for apprentices or kind of the internship type of things, then that also probably will resolve some of these skill match problems. Thank you.
Just an example of a small study in Indonesia by Gropello 2012 about the mismatch between supply and demand for labor. And she found out that there are two skills that needed, academic skill and generic skill. Academic skill is okay once they graduate from undergrad faculty, tertiary education, but the problem is the generic skill. One among others is the soft skill that I mentioned. So I think education system is also concerns about quality of education, and they have to help prepare young people to enter the labor force. This is lacking in Indonesia, and nobody feels that this is my responsibility. Those who are responsible for education, they only teach children, and those who are in employment, they feel that they have responsibility only for the workers. So there is a gap, and we have to do a lot of things, especially on the skill development and attitude behavior of young people, so they are ready and increase their employability into the labor market. And this is just an example. But now the government already aware and put them in the long-term development plan in the next 5 years. So I'm quite happy about this.
Okay, the mismatch. This is very big issues I think in every country. In Thailand, the mismatch is very, has been happening like this many decades already. And another issue that comes with the mismatch is about what you call the work below the degree. This also happened in the Thai working place. Thai government try to have a good match between the demand and supply, but sometimes we found out that this is the problem of data. The supply, they cannot tell what they really want. Do you know what they have? Like the 1 digit, 2 digit, 4 digits, something like that. They cannot go specific to the 4 digits one. And the demand, the university, the supply, the university one, they still produce students as they produced 10 years ago. They don't see what happened in the future. So I think this kind of problem, if the government, they cannot tell the university or tell the industry to talk together, there will be no way to solve this mismatch. Even many of you talk about how to, this is very important in terms of how to link the market with the university level. Okay. In the real world, this is a very big problem.
So the third question that was asked related to the informal sector and how to focus on building skills of maybe the underemployed or those who are not so easily measured within the economy, who are still making a significant contribution and who are in danger of being left behind in the development process. And maybe I can just develop that question a little by thinking about one of the facets of urbanization, or the implications of increasing urbanization. The UNDP report reminds us that in this region in the last 30 years, 1 billion people have been added to the region's cities, and in the next 30 years, another billion will be living in urban areas. And this increasingly means that those who are living in rural areas and those who are engaged in farming and those who are in the informal sector in rural areas, increasingly the average age of those employed in agriculture is rising. Are they in danger of being left behind? What can be done to address the skills and raise the productivity of the rural or informal agricultural sector? Of course, we know that investments in health, nutrition can improve the ability of people in the informal sector to stay in the workforce, to work for longer in good health. But what other specific responses need to be made to the rural, perhaps the rural poor?
Okay, I like this question a lot because you talk about the informal sector. And it's a very big informal sector in Thailand. And you talk about their unskilled, right? And it is true in Thailand that most of them are working in the agriculture sector. But we have what we call the capacity building for informal sector. We have we call the, I don't know you know that, we call the OTOP project, one Tambon one product. We encourage this kind of informal worker to have the second source of income by using their own local skills to make products and then sell in the market. So this is one of the how to make them kind of have the income security. And your second point, I think, about that if you're in the formal one and then you retired, you don't want to work anymore, right? So we have a strategy. Use the formal one as the volunteer worker when they are old. We use them as a volunteer worker to show the community members how to make the financing, to make the marketing. We use that kind of volunteer. So they will be proud of themselves that even they are old, but they still have a value in the community.
I just wanted to agree that there is actually there is a lack of data. I mean, kind of the aged people or even some other population group when it comes to the more detailed the profile. Like, for example, the kind of information we need. I mean, what the people they do for their livelihood, say when they become like 65 or 70, where the income comes. I mean, particularly for those who are in the informal sector working kind of information. I know that the formal sector employee, when they get retired, they get a pension, they are fine. But it is the kind of 80 or 85% of the people who are in the informal sector, what they do for their livelihood kind of things in the absence of any decent pension and other opportunity. So that is what actually we call it, we emphasize that there is kind of lack of information about their income, their expenditure patterns, how many people they live in a poverty condition, those kind of other informations. So that's very much actually the report actually emphasizes, in line with the data revolution called in the 2030 agenda. So therefore actually we need to collect more actually, survey of the kind of the aged people, even for other population group, the same situations for in fact the youth population also. In fact, actually, Madam Sri said that 10% of the youth actually, they are neither in the job market nor in the education or training. So they are kind of in idleness. That's 10%. But if you see Asia Pacific as a region, that percentage close to 30%. Like almost 26 to 30% of the youth in the region, in terms of number, it's a 220 million youth out of the around 670 million youth. They are not actually in either school or colleges. They are not actually looking for a job, or they are not anything. They're just basically hanging around with the parents' income for a few years. And that's the kind of youth we need to actually motivate them to either get into the colleges, university, or get into the labor market. And if they don't do that, that's a kind of they wait for a few years for a decent job. If they don't get a decent job, banking, other type of job, white collar job, then they get youth frustration, then political instability, all kind of things. So that's the kind of information we need, country after country, what the youth is doing, what is actually the kind of aged people actually, kind of informations. So therefore, I agree with that. We need to have a bit more data also, what they do after their retirement age or whatever it is.
We have a few moments more. If there are any other observations or questions before we finish. Anyone? Or are we losing a little bit of energy in the middle of the afternoon?
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe we can think about finishing a little early, and of course we have a tea break, I think, and I think the rooms will be rearranged for the final session. But we've heard a strong emphasis in the presentations and responses about, first of all, the need to for different countries or parts of the region at different stages of the demographic transition, needing a different emphasis on policy responses to the building of skills and productivity. But at the same time, the importance of taking a life cycle approach to the needs of building skills, investing in skills. I guess one of the dangers of the life cycle approach is that it sounds as though we have to do everything everywhere. And that makes it difficult when there are difficult choices to be made in how limited resources are deployed by government and others in investing in the workforce. But there are cross-cutting themes that we know from experience will improve employability, improve skill levels, improve productivity. The importance of focusing on health and nutrition right from before birth, and the contribution that good health makes to the ability to participate actively and productively in the workforce. The role of building cognitive ability particularly to adapt to what is a rapidly changing labour market, and we don't really know, we can't anticipate the kinds of skills that will be needed in a generation's time. But we do know that the ability to adapt and to change and to learn skills is going to be a really important quality of tomorrow's as well as today's labour force. And we know that the importance of focusing on improving the employability and the soft skills that go with the workforce. The focus that was mentioned particularly among young people in the transition from a formal education to the workplace. But thinking more broadly about education and training and the need to adjust mindsets that we have about education to see it as a lifelong process and something which maybe we all need to expect to dip in and out of several times during the course of our lives in retraining and reskilling for the needs and challenges of the next phase of economic development and employment opportunities. These are enormous challenges for the region. Different parts of the region are responding at different rates. The emphasis was also placed in the presentation on the value of international cooperation in this area, of sharing experience of good practice. That maybe there are significant opportunities to improve that, and that there's not a lot of evidence at the moment of work, of transnational work in the area of sharing good practice on skills development and productivity. So I want to thank you for your attendance and participation, and as we close, I'd like to invite you to join me in thanking the three members of the panel for the preparation and the contribution they've made to this afternoon's workshop. Thank you very much.